Part 5. Captain's Log. Commander Oscar Pomales, USS Lemoore, Orca, DD-460. It has been a while since I last contributed to this log. A lot has happened over the past couple days beyond entering the pit. What was supposed to be our first routine Atlantic crossing has turned into a cluster of biblical proportions. After our last journey back to Sydney, and being ordered to report to New York, and being reassigned to the Atlantic convoys, there was an uneasy feeling amongst my crew. We were trading dive bombers for more submarines. At least to the far north, beyond freezing, we had a chance to shoot back. And while we were not as well armed as the famed Fletchers, our humble Benson Livermore could still sling lead with the best of them. I think the 6 German planes on turret 4 alone says enough. I know I have stated this somewhere before, but I am proud to have a sharpshooter manning every one of my 5-inch 38s and 40mm mounts, even better than the directors sometimes. Unfortunately, while my crew are adept at shooting planes, and we are armed with our own weighty supply of depth charges, the ubiquitous German U-boats are still our greatest adversary. One humbled Jeremy so much, I remember walking to his bunk and seeing him crying over a photo of his girl. We all care deeply about the crew of Lemoore, even though it should be my job alone as captain. We all care about the defenseless convoys we shepherd through those enemy-held waters. However, we have all been through this shared struggle and damned war long enough that respect and cohesion has usurped tradition and regulations on this ship. At least now, should we sound general quarters, our entire ship knows we will either chalk at least another kill, or die trying. I am proud to be the captain of such a crew. I decided against mentioning the latest of the tomfuckery. I know Mr. Luther, Mr. Stinson, and Mr. Phillips have been keeping records of how the gyro compasses are fucked. Celestial navigation is scrambled to hell, and even the Mark 37 hiccuped following Titan's orders through that storm. And now, we sit here, still covering the portside flank of the convoy, as Titan goes to investigate an eerily silent and eerily medieval seaside town. This was definitely something we had never seen before. First, it was bad luck when comms and electrical were knocked out by lightning. Then it was confusion when all navigations were scrambled to hell. Finally, the horrific truth when 3 moons broached the horizon. And while my seasoned Arctic crew were tough enough that the sudden shock did not hinder us as much as some of the other ships, all of us occasionally cast glances at the considerably brighter sky. I didn't need Titan to tell us that shit was hitting the fan, and that we weren't where we needed to be, let alone where we needed to get to, Liverpool. But orders were orders. I kept sonar sweeping in standard patterns to port, and dispatched chiefs to ensure the lookout glasses did not turn increasingly skywards. I took a shaky breath, opened my door, and walked out onto the bridge. "Captain on deck!" Art announced, meeting me. "Mid-morning, sir." "Shut up, Art," I chuckled. "You know just as well as me that the clocks are fucked too." We both exchanged a smile. In fact, the whole bridge crew was smiling already. But then a clean uniformed lieutenant scrambled up to me, offering a straight-back salute. "Morning, sir." "Morning, Will," I reciprocated, my gaze towards the clock ticking away from 0623 hours. The poor man was still transitioning from the academy. "How's the convoy?" Will lowered his hand, standing straight as a ramrod. "Convoy remains stationary at this position. No updates from Titan or Admiralty. We're steady here, sweeping to port." I sighed. "Thank you." "Sir?" Will nodded, before dancing back towards the front of the bridge. I took hold of the warm cup of coffee waiting for me. 2 milks and 2 sugars, just the way I like it. "Get your beauty rest, sir?" Josh smirked at me. I chuckled. "No more than you, petty officer." We all shared a laugh. But then suddenly Josh tensed up, standing up straight. I watched as his training kicked in. It was like a wave of instinct washed across the bridge. "Combat reports radar contact bearing 286, relative range indefinite," he quickly spilled out in his concise speech. "Shit," I mumbled under my breath. I went for my own comms console, buzzing the CIC. "Go, Captain," the low voice of my XO Ben garbled through the speaker. "What's this?" "Pips on the radar screen, relative bearing 286, but they're going slow. Possible interference from the terrain." I frowned. "Is the range closing?" Everyone turned to me. There was a brief silence as Ben asked his team. "Yes, sir. Unknown aircraft traveling at 6-9 knots." "Sir!" Josh spoke out. "Lookouts report Samson sounding general quarters." There was only enough time for ice to slowly make its way through my veins. I'll take her, Mr. Luther. Captain has the con, Luther stated sharply. Art, sound general quarters. Aye, sir. Art flipped on the klaxons, speaking through the 1MC.
General quarters. All hands, man your battle stations. Set condition 1 throughout the ship. Lock down all watertight passageways. Combat. Contact bearing steady on 286. Range.
Stern and bow depth charge detail manned and ready. Main battery reports manned and ready. Engineering officer of the watch reports engineering manned and ready. Condition 1 set. Full boilers online. Max speed 37 knots. Electric plant split. All fire pumps online. Lookouts report the town sounding a general alarm, sir. I nodded. Very well. I was nudged back as Mr. Steele took his place at the gunnery control comms console. What are we looking at, Cap? Mr. Steele? I said in a calm voice. Unknown air contact bearing 286 relative. Range indefinite. Aye, sir. He nodded.
All mounts, director control. Load time delay rounds. Stand by to repel aircraft attack.
I shivered, knowing the Lemoore was now more than prepared to blast anything out of the sky.
Combat. Contacts changing to 293. Range 5 miles.
Sir! Novelist is launching her fighter! Will exclaimed. I immediately left the radio, grabbed my glasses, and looked over towards the Novelist, watching the distinctive gray smoke and the fighter being catapulted into the air, the engine buzzing into the sky. Mr. Steele, check fire! Aye, sir! If we're shooting down anything, at least it won't be friendlies. Damn idiots, I grumbled, reaching for the radio telephone, clicking onto the 22MC. Signals con. Radio the Novelist. Tell fighter to stay clear of airspace to avoid being shot down. I didn't stay for the response. I quickly took a position next to Will, staring out towards the radar-scrambling forest anxiously. Combat reports multiple air targets bearing 272, range 4 miles, sir, Josh relayed. I took a breath. Weapons, pass the order. Do not fire without orders from me. Aye, sir. Weapons, bridge, stand by to fire.
Contacts changing to 315, range 3 miles.
I felt a presence beside me. It's close enough for the 5-inch, sir. That made me put my glasses down. With only a radar bearing, behind tree cover, to have our eyes on him. I could feel the rest of the bridge looking at the poor lieutenant with disgusted disdain. We all waited in silence for radar to report.
Contact now bears 349, range 2
Forward
miles.
lookouts, report airborne contact. Josh paused. We all froze, looking at him. He's never done that before. Correction, he stuttered out. Dragons? I frowned, but then hurried around to the catwalk, looking with my own eyes. Dragons! Dozer shouted, pointing. Where? I shouted, looking to where he was pointing. There, sir! Dragons! Port bow! The real! I took a shaky breath as I looked across our bow, clearly making out 8 dark shapes that one could only describe as dragons. Orders from Titan, sir. I turned to Smith. Finally, something from Samson. Orders to hold fire, sir. You're fucking joking, I deftly said. Suddenly, the unmistakable twang sound of a bow-like weapon being released. I turned just in time to see a large javelin arc towards the dragons, diving down towards the town. And just as I had brought my glasses to see, the projectile missed the small grouping. The cannon shot made me flinch. I turned sharply, giving myself whiplash, seeing a small gray cloud rise and dissipate from Samson's number 1 turret. We all paused, even the dragons. But then they turned, flying away. And just as I was about to make a snarky comment about when did we arrive in Fantasyland, they turned to make their dive again.
All escorts, Titan, free to engage.
I distantly heard, "Give 'em hell!" I shouted to Steele. I swung the gun around, bringing our twin 40s to bear on those pips at 248. Once we were bared, I cut back into direct control while the rest of my gun crew filtered into the positions. What the hell are we shooting at? Chase cried as he slid rounds into the hopper on my side. No fucking clue! I shouted back over the klaxons. Adrenaline coursed through me, but my training held me firm. I didn't earn a sharpshooter badge and score 5 kills without it. Mount 42 in particular had 7 stripes on its barrel, including the 5 I earned it. But then a tap on my shoulder from Chase signaled that we were locked and loaded. I looked over at my friend Theodore, also my gun trainer. Behind me was Timothy Chase, and behind Theo was David, both ready to keep our twin 2-pounder fed and ready to sling lead. And from the frantic steps behind me, I could only assume that was Archer and Charlie, loading the ready rack to prepare for the coming engagement. Behind all of us, Ethan Steele Wall was cursing at our gun director again. "Glass is fucked! Switch to the local, I'm gonna try something!" Ethan cried. At least now I got to cut in with my own controls in the meantime. There were a few yips and hollers from Theo, Chase, and David. I switched the fire selector switch to automatic, and pulled the elevating gear switch into local. After meeting Theo's eyes and nod across the way, I double-checked my controls to ensure we were ready to rock and roll. We sat in terse silence as the klaxon stopped sounding, only the soft waves gently rocking the ship. I took deep breaths of the sea spray, squinting to look out towards the forest not far from the shoreline. If I was a pilot, I would come from there, and that's where I trained my guns. And judging from the angle of the 5-inch guns also pointed in that direction, with our complement of radar, fancy fire control director, and the mechanical quiz kid, my intuition might pay off.
All mounts, director control. Load time delay rounds. Stand by to repel aircraft attack.
Came Steele's voice of God through the 1MC. Hey Baker! I looked over at David. $10 says it's a false alarm. You seen the 3 moons? I'll take that bet, Chase said. Suddenly, a humongous whoosh of rockets sounded off behind us, followed by the buzzing of a plane foreign to port of us. I instinctively trained my gun towards the craft, but didn't take a beat after I saw the ubiquitous British bullseye. Jumpy, Theo merely remarked. Shut up, I snapped back, bringing our gun back towards the contact. Whatever it was would get a double dose of 40s and 5-inch anti-aircraft shells. I don't think we were this ready to meet attacking aircraft since January 43. I heard the ringing of bells from the shore. That rogue fighter circled around, climbing higher and higher with each turn, trying to take our job from us. We were ready to fight, all of us. But enemy aircraft, we did not see. Through the spider reticle, I spotted birds? No, those were too big to be birds at that distance. They had wings, they were flapping. Now more crested the mountains. 2, 4, 5, 8. There were 8 of them. The fuck are those? Chase mumbled behind me. I don't know, I deftly said, running the 6 to keep my sights trained on the first one. Focused. These were unknown targets. If I was given the order to fire, I wanted my first shells to land center mass. But then I heard a distant pewing sound come from ashore. Promptly after, 2 small spear-like arrows arced through the air at the dragons. Is that the village? Are they firing at them? Their shells were too slow, slower than even the pack rockets I've seen on some of the Brit corvettes. It was easy enough for them to maneuver away from, which they promptly did. They were maneuverable, maybe more so than Fokkers and Messerschmitts. Might actually get a challenge for once. But then the unmistakable sound of a 5-inch sounding off. A gray tracer arced overhead from our starboard, missing the dragons entirely. I knew full well that we could have easily landed a shell on them at this close range. No, that was a warning shot, no doubt. Are we trying to fucking scare dragons? David voiced my concerned thoughts. But it seemed to work. The black dragons hovered there for a moment, long enough for me to be dazzled by their scales for an instant, before resuming their dive. There they go!
All mounts, fire at will!
That was it. I slammed my shoe down on the fire hinge, the twin 40mm barrels lit up. Tracing the dragons, they became utterly engulfed in slumber black. I kept on firing, not sure exactly where my targets were now, but that volume of fire might find 1 or 2 in the haze. But then the soft buzz and the check fire bell and the tugs from Archer pulled away. Check! 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 I shouted into my headset. And then that fighter lined up. The tracers and distant gunfire shot through the massive black cloud. Already my gun crew were hooting and hollering, knowing full well that whatever they were meeting the Allies' finest in air power. In fact, they were so stunned by our enormous show of firepower, I made out 4 of those damn dragons trying to skirt the sea towards us. Oh no, you don't! I trained on them, slamming the fire push once more. It was a turkey shoot. They were bearing down directly towards us. I saw tracers from all our ships arcing attacking the dragons. A wall of fire chasing after those idiotic dragons who thought they could take on the U.S. Navy. 1, 2, 3 dragons went streaking down towards the frothing water. Stupid as these flying marines were, at least one was smart with his computers, breaking off and escaping our weapons. And just as the crew was groaning out, saying I could have landed a couple more shots on him, that fighter went and chased that last bastard down, swatting him out of the sky with a trail of cannon fire. And that was it. Our gun crew of Mount 42 cheered our asses off, hollering until we were hoarse at Mount 41, who couldn't bring their guns to bear. We had done it. We beat their dragon asses. We did something nobody else in this war has ever done. I stood, hunched over the table, unsure of what kind of history I was in the process of making. All I knew was that all radar contacts fell off, that our allied fighter had landed safely on the beach, and that fire control reported that we expended 32 5-inch shells, 439 rounds of 40mm, and 238 rounds of 20mm ammunition in 1 minute. While my crew celebrated, I stood unsure of my role in all of this. They would be getting hot food for the first time since we left the States, but I still had to write the reports. How would the Admiralty react after reading that Lemoore engaged a flight of dragons? How would they react knowing a couple million in men, ships, and equipment were stranded in a foreign land with no way of returning home? It was strange, still fearful of court-martial, even though the only person with more authority than me was a certain Commander Drake aboard Samson. And even then, we were of equal rank. At least it wasn't me alone dealing with this nightmare this time, even though we have not escaped all the trials. Still, Captain, Smith walked up to me, holding a towel. I looked around, realizing my shattered coffee mug spilled on the floor. Oh, pardon me. Smith chuckled as he knelt down and cleaned my mess. Radar reports no contact, sir. Josh looked up at me from his trademark distant stare. I finally took a deep breath, that sense of impending doom leaving me. Arthur, you may secure from general quarters. Aye, sir, Art said. You could feel the tension evaporate with Art's words over the 1MC. I sighed again. But as Mr. Steele began to walk past me, I caught him. Steele, I quickly said, gathering the bridge's attention. I paused for a moment, then nodded. Good work. Thank you. Steele nodded. Aye, sir. He worked his way back to the CIC for a smoking meal. I couldn't stop sighing as I worked my way down the to-do list. Mr. Luther, she's yours for the time being. Aye, sir, William nodded. I'm going to type up a report, then pass out. I'll be in my cabin if you need me. Aye, sir, aye, sir, the bridge said collectively with a smile. And with that, I stumbled back into my little cabin here on the O3 level. I think I was asleep by the time I hit the sheets.